Soul Not For Sale. Get that drawstring off of there. Soul Not For Sale. It's the Soul Not For Sale podcast. It's episode 484. And here is the opening remarks. How much are we willing to destroy in the name of inclusivity? You ever think of that? For inclusion, nowadays, the past 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6, 7, 8, we've been willing to destroy a lot in the name of inclusion. And there's been this, what Joe Rogan is going to talk about with Gad Saad, this battle for censorship. You know? Freedom of speech has been cracked and chipped away at in the name of inclusion, keeping people safe, not exposing people to violence, because words are violence now. How much are we willing to destroy? How much are we willing to sacrifice for inclusion? Even to the point where we are excluding people in the name of inclusion. You know, pushing women away, pushing women aside for these new women who have arrived on the scene. You know, it just keeps going. I'm sure when I say that, there's so many things that come into your head that you've seen, that you've experienced, you know? And that's the question to ask. How much are we willing to destroy in the name of inclusion? Joe Rogan covers this in a clip with Gad Saad. And I'm also going to show you a clip of my YouTube grandfather, a gentleman named Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is going to be talking about someone that I believe Gad Saad is talking about, but doesn't actually bring up. He doesn't want to start any kind of beef, but he's talking about somebody, and I'm pretty sure I got it all covered. I've made a connection here. So we're going to get into that. Before we do, I have to bring you to the store. You know what store it is. I am CoachColin.com. Newest design right here. It is Public Enemy #1. Check it out. It is the cricket connoisseur himself, Mr. Dr. Evil. We also have our newest design that you can find right on the homepage. It's something I can't even say on the podcast, but if you're someone who survived the biggest psychological experiment ever known to man, this is your certificate of achievement. It is called the Certified Pure Blood t-shirt. We have t-shirts for men and women, tank tops for men and women, and hoodies. Get it all there on IamCoachColin.com. If you want 10% off, put in the discount code area, I am Coach Colin. All one word, all capital letters, 1 L on the Colin, gets you 10% off, big purchases, small purchases, anything you want. Let's get into it. And if you're somebody who has already done that on the site, thank you so much. You are much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now let's get into this clip. Oh, we got Jimmy there already. Let's switch it up over here. Let's get to it.
Evolved a moral compass, to use an evolution thing. For social species, it makes perfect sense for us to have evolved a distinction between right and wrong. If you wrong me, there's going to be retribution. So we evolved that emotion. So I often get frustrated when religious people say, sure, evolution explains a lot of things, but it can't explain morality. That's simply not true. There's a lot of very clear evolutionary reasons for why a social species would have evolved a moral compass.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's not something that exists outside of the purview of science. And I think, there are several people I think that have been on this show that have, Michael Shermer, Sam Harris, that have written about the fact that, the moral compass is totally within the purview of science.
It completely makes sense that there's a moral compass. And it also makes sense that you're talking about these divine moments. Yeah. I think it's all these things and then some. I think it's all these things and then some. I think to just sort of rationalize it down to survival instincts and sort of having that dismissive, reductionist view of what it means to be a person and have these experiences in life and what life is. I think we're trying to label something that is almost impossible to believe is true. That I'm saying sounds with my mouth and you know what I'm thinking. We're like sharing a context and a language, and we have all these words that are connected to very specific things that we're very aware of. Meanwhile, we're hurling through infinity on an organic spaceship that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour in a shooting gallery of asteroids and comets, and this is all these things are true. And we're finite life forms that are constantly innovating and trying to escape the boundaries of our eventual demise, physically, psychologically. We're trying to connect each other on the internet and put chips in our brains, and it's wild what's happening. And in the middle of all this, there's a battle, a true battle in 2023 over censorship, a real battle, like the likes of which I've never seen. Because as a kid growing up, there was no arguments against freedom of speech in America.
Right.
I do not remember ever seeing someone argue against freedom of speech. It certainly wouldn't have been someone on the left.
Yeah. So, sorry.
No, I'm saying just that alone is it's a terrifying thing. It's like people are literally crafting the shackles that are going to eventually contain them, and they're doing so greedily and enthusiastically.
So can I offer a philosophical explanation for why I think this is happening?
Sure.
Some of your viewers may have heard me mention this elsewhere, but it's worth repeating. So in my last book, In the Parasitic Mind, I talk about two ethical systems, deontological ethics and consequentialist ethics. Deontological ethics is an absolute statement. For example, if I say it is never okay to lie, that is a deontological statement. If I say it is okay to lie to spare someone's feelings, so the example that I often give is if your spouse asks you, do I look fat in those jeans, then put on your consequentialist hat really quickly and then lie, right? So for most things, most of us are going to be consequentialists. But when it comes to certain fundamental principles that define, say, Western values, those have to be deontological.
Yeah.
Right? And so, as to your point, until very recently, we all agreed that presumption of innocence was a deontological statement that can't have a but associated to it. You can't say, I believe in presumption of innocence, but not for Brett Kavanaugh. I believe in freedom of speech, but not for Donald Trump. And so one of the reasons why I've gotten into a beef with someone that we both know well is because that person has repeatedly violated what he should know better, which is that deontological principles by definition should never have the but qualifier. Yeah. But now it has become perfectly okay when talking about freedom of speech to tackle it from a consequentialist perspective. Don't criticize Islam because that means you're hurting people's feelings. Therefore, shut your mouth, right? No, you can criticize Islam, you can criticize Judaism, you can criticize evolution, you could do whatever. There is no but, right? And I think if we can ever return to understanding the distinction between deontological and consequentialist, I think we'll be back on the right track.
What do you think got us on the wrong track in the first place?
So I think it's the distinction between reason and feelings. We're both a reasoning animal and a thinking animal, but there's been now too much emphasis placed on feelings, right? So if I tell a truth that is hurtful to someone, then I should not tell the truth. So I've often, when I went in front of the Canadian Senate, as did Jordan, for Bill C-16, the transgender bill, neither of us was arguing that transgender people shouldn't live with full dignity and so on. But what we were arguing is that in the pursuit of that noble goal, you don't murder truth, right? So if I were to say it's insane for 6'4" biological males to walk into female spaces, that makes no sense. I'm not erasing transgender people, right? But if the optimization metric is make sure to not hurt people's feelings, you start conflating these things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Wow. That was actually well explained. Yeah. Yeah. And I think when he said we're a reasoning animal and a thinking animal, I think he meant reasoning and feeling. And now we've just put an emphasis on feeling. I think that's what he meant there, which makes perfect sense. That's what everything's about. That's how, in the past, I think 4 years I've been hearing it, maybe 5, how words have become violence and everything is about how I feel. and you can't criticize me. And if you have preferences, you're phobic, you know, fat phobic and all sorts of things. This is very well put. Very well put. 'Cause we're focusing on those things. We're focusing on feelings way too much. That's why people went crazy for Ben Shapiro when Ben Shapiro has that infamous line. He's like, the facts don't care about your feelings. And that's why people got really mad at him. People got really angry with Ben Shapiro when he said that. They did not like that at all. Oh, man. But again, when he goes into saying that he has a beef with somebody who is stepping on freedom of speech or thinking freedom of speech should be, you're free to say anything, but this person shouldn't be. And that's what's been going on with freedom of speech. That's why I said freedom of speech is not gone, but it's being chipped away at, because there is a lot of those buts. You know, you should be free to say anything, but this thing that hurts my feelings, that should be off limits. You know, that you know, the famous line that they use to code exactly what I just said is that opens people up to violence. You know, of course you have freedom of speech, but you can't say this, that opens people up to violence. And then all of a sudden it's like, but I'm not calling for any direct violence. I'm not saying that. That's not what's, yes, but still it opens up people to violence. So you shouldn't be able to say that. And it's just, it's oil and water that doesn't mix with freedom of speech. You have to be able to say whatever you want. It's interesting. So that person that he's talking about, the reason I said this gentleman is my YouTube grandfather, definitely because if it's anybody, it is this gentleman here. When it comes to saying things into a microphone on YouTube, Jimmy Dore, and I love it. And the connection I made here is right now he's about to talk about Sam Smith, and I'm pretty sure Gad Saad was talking about Sam Smith as well, because Sam Smith has this idea that everybody should be allowed on Twitter to say whatever they want except for Donald Trump. And I found this clip of Jimmy Dore talking about when Trump got reinstated onto Twitter. And this is what Sam Smith had to say about that. And this is the exact thing I'm talking about. This is the danger, or this is the pick in the hammer that is chiseling away at freedom of speech. This exact attitude. Let's get into it.
And Sam Harris tweeted this out. The prevailing opinion among free speech absolutists appears to be that this platform, in order to become healthy, must helplessly publish the malicious lies of any maniac at scale, regardless of the consequences. Good luck with that. Hey, good luck with you pretending that you're for liberty, freedom of speech, democracy, anything like that. Anything that actually is a Western value. You're not for it. You're a right-wing fucking maniac.
Oh, yeah, he's a Western.
Yes, he's all about
guy.
how the West is better than the East and Middle East and Muslims. The West is the king, and he's going against every one of those. By the way, how do we know that they're malicious lies? How do we know when someone publishes something that they're a malicious lie? Who decides that? Go ahead, what?
Well, I think it's the only way we can fight malicious lies by any maniac is by, if it takes that, publishing our own malicious lies. Any maniac, as long as their name is not Trump.
As long.
And I think I would vote for that. And also we need to drop an atomic bomb in the Middle East. Thanks.
So what he's really saying there is what this person says. Yes, Sam, that's what free speech is. He's describing. So what Sam Harris is saying, hey, you just want to let anybody say whatever the fuck they want? Yes, that's called free speech. What you just described is free speech.
All right, Jimmy, I'd like to address that.
There you go. Jimmy Dore. He's amazing. He is amazing, man. And shout out to the people who watch my channel, because the only reason I know about Jimmy Dore is because you can actually look into who your subscribers watch, and Jimmy Dore was at the top of the list. It was Jimmy Dore, Russell Brand, and Joe Rogan, and Fox for the older people out there. Not so much anymore, but that's the exact attitude that's chipping away at freedom of speech. I mean, Sam Harris is a super intelligent person, but he's not the only one that's subscribing to that attitude. There's so many people. You should be allowed to say whatever you want, but you shouldn't be allowed to touch on this. And what they do is and I'm sure you already know this, they just brand you as things. You know, if you bring up a certain thing, it's like, oh, well, that's a QAnon type of conspiracy. That is just racism. That's just coded racism. That's just white supremacy. That's just like, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Homophobic, transphobic, all these different things. You just keep getting labeled, and all these things are band-aids. It's like freedom of speech is like this huge wave of water, and they've just set up a dam, and they're just putting these band-aids. Every time freedom of speech starts leaking out, they're just like, let's just cover it here. Oh, it's leaking there. Let's cover it here. And they just keep doing that. So very, very interesting conversation. Gad Saad and Joe Rogan talk about that some more in that podcast, but not as much as you'd think. You know, if you want a timestamp on that, I would say it's a 1 hour 53 minutes all the way to the 2 hour mark. They touch on that whole subject. I got some more clips that I'm going to be doing, but like the video, it helps so much. You have no idea. Like the video, it's down here. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. What are you waiting for? We're doing 1 to 3 videos a day, every day. And other than that, I am out. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. What do you think about that? What do you think about the whole thing of inclusivity, you know, pretty much wrecking what we have set up now as a society? It's smashing things. It's smashing freedom of speech. It's smashing your right to, autonomy over your body. It's smashing the right for you to actually assemble and protest. You know, in Canada, they're actually setting up a rule that if there's something going on in terms of the LGBTQ community, let's say they have an event going on, a drag story time type of thing, you're not allowed to be within, I think it's 200 meters or something like that, or you can be fined up to $25,000. And it's funny how that, again, inclusivity. What if a politician, because it's going to happen in our time, a politician is trans or gay, and now people oppose something that they're talking about, and they want to assemble to protest. They won't be allowed to. It gets out of control. It gets out of control. Anyways, guys, that is episode 484. I had to check there. Other than that, I am out.